And so we were like, when we were leaving for Milton, I remember saying, Milton, I was like, anything that we can't replace, we just got to get out of here. Because number one, they're saying 15-foot storm surge.
Yeah.
And number two is
in the beginning for Milton.
Right. And they're talking about these crazy winds. Like, what if the roof blows off, right?
I know. That's what I was terrified.
Hey, babe. How are you?
I am doing well.
I know. It's been a while since we've come in here and recorded any podcasts. Today is December 17th as we're sitting here recording.
I know, which is crazy. I know. It's been a while since we released an episode.
Yeah. First of all, we're both getting over colds, so we sound a little stuffy.
Thank goodness I have my voice. You sound like you're still...
Yeah, it's weird. So if I'm sniffling a little bit, that's why. But I've had some people ask me like, hey, what happened to your podcast? And it really... The reason that we haven't really put out any podcast content is after the hurricane. So we had Hurricane Helene and then Milton. And we've put out some social media content. We've put out some email blasts to our database talking about the hurricanes and the post-hurricane market.
Because, of course, those storms changed things in the marketplace.
Yeah, but we didn't. It felt weird to come in and talk about it in a podcast when I knew that so many people were really dealing with
felt a little tone deaf to release an episode about other topics, and mostly everybody that we know lost their house.
Yeah. So we live in Shore Acres, which is a neighborhood that experiences flooding all the time.
I'm sure somebody just gasped when they found it.
Every time I tell somebody we live in Shore Acres, they go, oh my God, yes, I know. But here's the thing is our house did not flood.
Yes. So let's make something clear before we even start all of this.
Yes.
There is a portion of Shore Acres that doesn't flood, you guys.
Well, let's say this. It's not that it doesn't flood, because the water did come up to our garages.
But, okay, typical Shore Acres sunny day flooding.
Right, we don't get the sunny day flooding.
The...
rainy day flooding.
Yeah, the little rainstorms.
Right.
I can still get in and out of my house perfectly fine.
Correct.
And here, the worst hurricane that we have had for flooding.
Yep.
And we still didn't get water in our house.
Yeah, so... We live in the Twin Lakes area of Shore Acres, which is this part at the very kind of northwest part of Shore Acres where they dredged up some lakes and they used that dirt to build the land up when they built those houses. So
the streets. Yeah.
Right. So they sit at 9 feet. Our elevation certificate for our house is 9 feet. We had water up to our doorstep. The line was right there.
The first doorstep.
Doorstep.
So not like right there at the front door, but the first doorstep to the little porch.
Correct.
And then it would have to go higher to actually get to our front door.
Yeah. And so the point is it felt weird to come and talk about anything other than the hurricane devastation. And at the same time, it felt a little insensitive to just put out content about the hurricane.
Yeah.
And the damage.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, Milton comes right behind it.
Oh my God.
Right. And so anyways, the point of this episode of our podcast is to really talk about what happened with the hurricanes, what's going on with the market post Helene and Milton.
Yes.
Right? Your parents' home got flooded for the first time in its entire existence.
Yes. So my parents live in Riviera Bay. They've owned the house since 1978, and it's on the water. Now, it doesn't have the waterfront in the back of the house.
Right.
There's a street, and then after that, across the street is the canal.
Yep.
Never flooded.
Ever.
And
I remember your mom saying, we'll be okay.
Yes. Yes. So with Helene, we evacuated to Lakeland.
Right.
We got lucky enough to pick a hotel that was right next to a train track. So 4 a.m.
It was three times during the night.
Yeah. I think it was like 2, 4, and 6.
That was crazy.
Yeah. But, I talked to my parents and asked them, what is their plan and all this. And, they evacuated, but they didn't do anything to prep the house.
Nope. And
I remember, the night that Helene was coming through.
Yeah.
We went to bed. And I ended up waking up around 12:30.
And I had been talking with our neighbors. So I put together a little group chat with, that was for Milton, I think. Yeah. But I was talking to our neighbor Kelly by text because I knew that she did not evacuate.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, so what's going on? She goes, oh, it's whatever. But in the meantime, we could see in the Shore Acres Facebook group that people in the middle of the neighborhood already had water in their homes.
Yeah. So I woke up at 12:30 and I just open up Facebook and I am in the Shore Acres Facebook group page,
Right.
and everybody's like freaking out and showing how high the water is.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my, like I panic mode.
Yep.
And I just lean over and I slap Joey awake. And I'm like, you need to get in touch with our neighbor.
Yeah, and I did. And that's when she told me that the water had crept up to the garages. And she said, I think she told me that she last looked at it at like 10:30 and there was nothing. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of water in the street.
Yeah.
And then within 90 minutes, it came up to, and that was the highest that it got. And I remember she sent me a picture of our backyard.
Yes.
And it was literally a lake.
Yes.
And I was like, is there water in our house? Like I couldn't tell from the
Yeah.
photos. So
And what's crazy is that when I see these photos and I hear from our neighbor, like where the water is up to, I could not control this. I just start shaking. Like it was just scaring me. And I'm like, okay, you know what? If water gets into our house, just take a deep breath. You're not the only one.
yeah, and that was why when Milton was coming, we prepped like crazy.
Yes. We
Because-
didn't do anything for Helene.
No, we just left.
I couldn't even find seal and peel.
But
So,
Tina's parents, they just left their house.
Yep.
And said, we'll be back. No sweat.
yeah.
But the house ended up having, 2 feet of water in it?
Yes.
And there was mementos, keepsakes, family photographs that were
Yes.
stored under beds and things like that that were trashed. And so we were like, when we were leaving for Milton, I remember saying, Milton, I was like, anything that we can't replace, we just got to get out of here. Because number one, they're saying 15-foot storm surge.
Yeah.
And number two is
In
they're
the beginning
protected-
for Milton.
Right. And they're talking about these crazy winds. Like, what if the roof blows off, right?
I know. That's what I was terrified.
So we just took 20 black totes.
We packed up our entire house.
Everything except for furniture.
Yeah.
And then we took it to our listing in the Salt Air building downtown that was
Yes.
vacant.
Thank
And
you,
just-
Zane.
Yes, thank you to Zane and Mitchell for letting us do that. And we just took it all in there, right? And we parked my car in their parking space on the 6th floor. And we took your car to Orlando, which
Yep.
is where we went for that storm. The point is that the prep for that storm, we boarded up all of our windows. We took everything out of the house.
Yeah, we weren't playing games.
Shut off electric, shut off of water. Like, because what I noticed is like what you just said earlier, which was Helene changed things. Helene changed the psyche
Yeah.
of not only our neighborhood, Shore Acres,
Oh, yeah.
but St. Pete in general. There were people that flooded during Etta and they flooded during Adalia, and they're like, yeah, this sucks, but we're going to rebuild. I called Ava and Matt, who are clients of ours that we helped buy
Oh,
a
yeah.
house in Shore Acres. I called them during the storm and said, how are you guys doing? And she
Yeah.
said, because I knew they weren't evacuating. And she said, we had to go to the neighbor's house across the street because it was elevated because the water was hip deep in our house or whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, we're not coming back here.
Yeah.
And they've only been there for a year.
Well, she also, touched on a really good point because they have 2 little girls.
Oh, I know. I totally
And
understand
that
it.
traumatizes them. Like,
Right.
I remember back, I don't even know when Hurricane Charlie was.
That was like 2005.
Yes.
Yep.
So, however old I was, I think I was in middle school. And just hearing about the hurricanes coming our way and not knowing where it was going to go
Yep.
scared me.
No, I get it.
I didn't want my family to lose their house.
I get it, but what I'm saying is that we didn't see that after Adalia.
Yeah.
We didn't see it after Etta. People were just like, yeah, whatever. But to flood during Adalia and then 13 months later flood during Helene, people were like, I'm not coming back to this neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm not coming back to this house.
Yeah.
And so here's
a
what's
lot.
happened within the market in St. Petersburg, Shore Acres, the beaches.
Yeah.
The phones started ringing for us and every other agent in town, and people saying, can I sell my house without renovating it and still collect the insurance money? And I remember getting on conference calls with Alyssa Ward at Boss Law and talking about what does this look like? How does this get
Yeah.
handled?
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, when you think about it, it sounds like a scam, because I remember that's what your father did.
He did.
Last year, around this time, he just decided.
He flooded during Idalia.
Yeah, he flooded during Idalia, decided to sell his house and claim the insurance money. And I was like, can he?
No, and I remember when we were talking about doing that, because he wanted to put the house back together. His house was flooded 5 times during the 30, 40 years that he owned it.
Yeah, no.
And at 82 years old, I was like, Dad, come on. Like this, we've been thinking about selling this house for the past 5 years anyways. Like, why are you going to try to go through this again? It's too much. Mm-hmm. And for the first 3 or 4 weeks, he's like, no, remember we were shopping for flooring. But then he said, do you think somebody would buy this house in its current state? And I said, yeah, sure, right? And then he told me he talked to his insurance company and they would give him the money. I said, all right, let me call him and ask him. So I called the guy and I go, look, he's paid the premium. He's entitled to the claim.
Yeah.
Whether he owns the house or not. And so we had been through that personally. So when people started calling me and saying, can this happen? I said, yes, it can. And then I talked to Alyssa and she said, it can, but number one, we've got to look at their insurance policy. We got to look at their mortgage, because there could be clauses in individual mortgages.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I know that there was a bunch of agents that were counseling people on what this process looked like and then putting homes on the market for land value.
Yeah.
And we helped a couple people sell their houses.
Mm-hmm.
Before the storm, they probably could have sold these homes for $500,000 to $600,000.
Mm-hmm.
After the storm, $250,000.
Which is crazy.
But they got their insurance money on top of it.
Yep.
They didn't have mortgages, and they just said, I'm out.
I know. The people who didn't have mortgages definitely just...
Yeah.
That was the best situated. The people that do have mortgages and in that situation, that's tough.
It's tough because the land isn't worth enough.
Yeah.
And so what we saw this flood of inventory hit the market. Now we're working with a handful of people that are looking to buy waterfront teardowns.
Yep.
Houses that still exist, but they just need to be torn down and somebody can build a new house on the lot. And so these are people that saw the opportunity in the market. And I put out a social media video about 5 weeks ago that, hey, this is the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not to be insensitive to somebody whose home's flooded and they're like, look, I just got to get out of this neighborhood. I can't come back here. Right?
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for people that have been thinking about buying a house on the water or building something.
Well, it's a win-win. Somebody can find a deal to build their waterfront dream home, and then you're helping somebody just get out. That's done. They've had it.
Right.
So
we were helping people look for these pieces of land. And this is from Northeast St. Pete, Venetian Isles, Shore Acres, Snell, over to the beaches. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a day, this is about probably 4 weeks ago, where I was like, man, there's a lot of inventory. Like, what does this look like total in Pinellas County? So from like Safety Harbor, right, all the way down around Pinellas Point, up the beaches to Tarpon Springs.
Okay.
I pulled all the waterfront actively listed homes. Okay. Just waterfront, okay?
How many?
And then I had to filter through the list and find out which ones were being marketed as teardowns.
Yeah.
And I could kind of look, it was kind of price driven. It was like capped out at like $1.5 million. Anything above that typically had a house that was move-in ready still on it. There was 220 active listings. But here's the thing.
Wow.
That's only on the water. That doesn't include the homes inside those neighborhoods that were still being listed as teardowns, right?
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so that became the opportunity in the market for buyers that were looking. And now, so today I'm looking at Shore Acres specifically, again, because if you live here in St. Petersburg, you understand the challenges that Shore Acres has.
Yeah.
Right. And this isn't to dump on the neighborhood. I know some people are going to be like, hey, listen, don't talk crap about it's no secret.
Yeah.
We live in Shore Acres. It's no secret that there's flooding issues there. There are currently actively listed homes in Shore Acres 80. Okay. And there's about 30 pending sales, right? And there are roughly 33 closed sales since the hurricane.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
The majority of those, there's a couple that are over $2 million. Those are move-in ready homes that didn't flood, probably on Bayshore. The rest of them are all teardowns. They're all homes that need to be torn down. They can be renovated, put back together. Mm-hmm. But here's where we've been talking to sellers or buyers about. First of all, the FEMA 50% rule comes into play with a lot of these homes, right?
Yeah.
So 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as teardowns, 50% of the homes that are listed as te The FEMA 50% rule, if you don't know what that is FEMA puts a dollar amount on the structure of the property. That doesn't include your land and anything else like a pool or whatever. Maybe your house is worth on the open market $500,000, but the FEMA structure value could be $100,000, right? The rest of the money's in the dirt, it's in the pool, it's in whatever.
Yeah.
If the damage exceeds 50% of that value, in order for you to get a permit from the city to renovate the home, you have to bring it up to code. Elevate the home, knock it down, build a new one. Oh, I mean, it's so restrictive.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of homes that are going to fall under that, right? And not be able to be rebuilt. And then, we're seeing homes in our neighborhood being elevated. People are raising their houses. But what we were telling buyers and sellers was, from a seller standpoint, like if you're going to sit on this house and understand that maybe you can't put it back together because the FEMA 50% rule.
Yeah.
And for a buyer, if the intent of the buyer was to buy a house as an investment, to flip it and put it on the market in 6 months,
no.
I don't know why anybody would do that.
Yeah.
But people are doing it.
Yes.
Who's going to buy that house? If you were working with a buyer that came to you and said, Tina, we want to buy a house. And you walked into a home and you said, look, this house flooded twice in 13 months, once during Idalia, once during Helene. It's back on the market. Mm-hmm. You want $600,000. Flood insurance is $7,000 a year.
Yeah.
If your buyer was like, I love this house, what would you say to them?
I mean, with multiple flood claims, that's tough.
Yeah.
But, we are getting questions asking like, okay, well, what if it's the first time I flooded?
Correct.
So
Yes.
say my parents, we have a couple of clients that have a house over in St. Pete Beach.
Yep.
I think the homes that flooded for the first time ever in Helene should get a pass.
I think
that it's safe to say because that has been the worst flooding
It was the
we
worst.
have ever seen.
The worst flooding we ever had. And so, like, to your point, so those homes that never flooded before, but they flooded during that storm,
Yeah.
I agree that if somebody was like, hey, I'm interested in this house, it doesn't have the stigma
Yeah.
of a house that flooded
Yeah.
twice in 12 months.
Remember when the night of Helene, I pulled up, I think it's like Google Earth or something that showed the storm.
Oh, it's
And
huge.
it was right next to us. You guys, the top of it, the tip of it was already in like Georgia, like mid-Georgia.
Yep.
The tail of it was still in Cuba.
Yeah, it was huge.
That was a massive storm.
Yep.
So
Huge.
that's where I'm like, okay, this was just hopefully
Yeah.
once in 100 years, whatever they are saying, type of storm. And we don't have anything like that in the next hurricane season. But, I think the people that flooded for the first time ever, like my parents, they didn't do anything to prepare. No. They're going through, they're putting together their house, and it's just a lot.
It is a lot.
It's unfortunate.
And so as we sit here today talking about this on the podcast, it's because we have seen this over the last 4 months, right?
Yeah.
So September, October, November, 3 months, right? There's still trash in the streets.
Oh, yeah.
There's-
Oh, my gosh, the beaches.
There's still piles of debris, right?
Yeah.
And as people are asking, like, what is the market? Like, we came in here to record this today, and it was the first question Zach asked me. He goes, hey, so what's the market like after the storms? I'm like, well.
I mean, that's pretty much the number one question that everybody's asking right now.
And so the thing is the market has definitely been affected by the storms.
Yeah. 100%.
Even for people that don't live in these flood-prone neighborhoods, right? There's been people trying to leave the flood-prone neighborhoods.
Yep.
Where do they go, right?
Where's Flood Zone X so that
Right.
they don't have flood insurance?
They want to go to Allendale. They want to go to Central Oak Park. Some of them
Yeah.
want to go south over the Skyway into Parish and Palmetto.
Yeah.
Some will go North County, like, Travis and Chris. We helped them sell their house in Shore Acres, and they went to Clearwater, right?
Yeah.
It's 53 feet above flood there.
Some people want to get out of the state.
Yeah. Some people want to leave Florida altogether. So as we've seen the market sort of react to this,
Yeah.
one of our clients asked me the other day what he felt, what I thought his house would be worth after he renovated it. It's never flooded before, right? And he said, what do you think my house is worth once I put it back together? And here's where that becomes challenging, right? First of all, we're not going to have any comp sales because all the comp sales over the last 60 days, 90 days are going to be flood houses. They're going to be sold for dirt value, right? So we don't have any comp sales. And number two, I don't know what the market looks like, who the buyer is that comes in and says, I know this house flooded. I will buy it, slab on grade, non-elevated house.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no data yet, right?
Yeah.
So we're just kind of watching how this plays out. We're talking to people. We're helping them get out of the homes that they don't want to be in anymore, right? And we're helping people that see the opportunities to buy vacant land. I mean, there's a house on it, but the house can be knocked down, right?
Yeah.
And build their dream home,
Yeah.
right?
Even the vacant land prices, like some people are still trying to get like an astonishing amount of money just because, the view. And it's like, okay, but the person houses over just sold for like 800. You can't ask 1.1 or 1.2.
We're seeing a ton of that on the beach. I'm seeing a lot of listings come on the market at 1.1, 1.2.
Yeah.
And then all the comp sales are at 850, 800. And it's very difficult to say, hey, listen, Mr. Seller, like I get it. You lived in this house for 40 years. You love it and all that. But who's going to give you that money when the neighbors are all selling for 800?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe somebody does, but I'm seeing most of those $1.1 to $2 million properties sit there. They're not moving.
Yeah.
Right? It's been 3 months since the hurricanes. How are you feeling about post-hurricane living?
Well, this was the first hurricane season that really like brought me down to my knees. Like when we packed up for Milton, I was so scared.
Yeah, I know it. I remember you being so keyed up and on edge. Your dad and your brother came over to help us put up the boards. And you were like,
going off.
Oh, yeah. You were like, we're putting boards up on this window. And you're like, who cares about that window? What about this one? And your dad's like, dude, calm down.
I wanted to board up all the windows and we didn't have enough plywood to board up all the windows.
Your dad was like, we'll get to all of these. And then you walked inside and he was like, man, what is it? You were just such a ball of stress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was so stressed out. And another thing is that, okay, we're both real estate agents.
Yes.
We're both real estate agents. We don't make any money unless we close on a house.
All of our pending transactions during the storm.
On the water.
All of them.
One of them, got canceled because it was a single story condo in Treasure Island and that thing.
I remember going to the home inspection for this property the Wednesday before the storm.
Yeah.
And it was right, I think
it was Tuesday. I think
whatever it was.
Thursday.
But from the porch to the water was maybe 50 feet.
Yeah.
And it was completely flat. And I remember saying, this might flood on Friday. And I remember the buyer saying, no, the agent told me that's never flooded over here. And I go, when people say it doesn't flood, it just hasn't flooded.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it won't ever. And I remember texting with her during the storm. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how's everything going? Because she lived in the same area.
Yep.
And she said, well, I'm on the second floor of my current building and the water is up to the porches, my porch, and my neighbors had to come upstairs. So she said, I promise you the condo I'm under contract to buy is flooded.
Yeah.
And it had 5 feet of water in it.
Yeah. So on top of regular hurricane stress, like, is my home going to get damaged?
Right.
Of course, what are we going to do, about paying our bills and all of this stuff in our business? And
you're worried about your home, your clients' homes.
Yeah.
Right. And then, correct.
Current business.
Yes.
And then potential business. Like, okay, we got hit with Helene, flooded.
Yeah.
Okay, Milton, I'm like, great, or the home's going to fly away. Like, it was so much. And honestly, in that moment, I was just like, I made the decision. We're both not going to be agents anymore.
Yeah, you were like, this is so stupid that we're both in this.
Yeah. So I actually, as of, now, like, I placed my license inactive.
Yep.
And I'm getting a job doing something else.
Yeah. I remember after Helene, one of our listings had some water underneath it in the unlivable space.
Yeah.
Right?
Like the garage space.
Yep. And it was under contract. And then 2 weeks later, Milton comes along and did 100 times more damage. I mean, it ripped down trees, it destroyed the roof, it ripped off soffits and fascia. And I was like, what is, like...
Yeah, if you were an agent that had something under contract and on the water during these hurricanes and you still got it to close...
I know.
Congratulations.
Well, our townhouse listing in Terra Verde that's closing this week, we had people looking at it prior to the storms.
Oh, yeah.
And then nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
After the storms, it's like it was crickets for a while.
The guy that's actually under contract to buy our townhouse.
To close on a Friday.
It was funny because he came to see it and really liked it.
Yeah.
But he's from Texas. So he wanted to bring his wife back to see it like the next week. So she came back with him to see it. And she liked it, but they were looking at some other homes.
Yeah.
Then Helene hits like that week. I remember they were supposed to fly out the morning of Helene, and his agent was telling me, she's like, you're not getting on a plane that day. I promise you. So that's how close it was to the storm. Yeah. Right. And then they came back the week after to take a look at all of the properties that they had looked at to see if any of them flooded. Ours didn't, miraculously.
Yeah.
So they came to see it again. Mm-hmm. And then when we were evacuating for Milton, we're at some random gas station east of Tampa at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm putting gas in my car, and he pulls up, and he gets out, and I go, hey, Brad. Right?
Yeah, it was so crazy.
Yeah, I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm getting the hell out of St. Pete. What about you? And I said, so are we. We're going to Orlando. He goes, yeah, I'm going to Kissimmee. And he goes to me, he said, listen, I love that townhouse, but I'm not doing anything right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not buying shit.
Yeah, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it took him from that storm to the time that they came back and started looking again, almost a month. Mm-hmm. And so when you had these properties that were out there, they were listed, they had people looking at them, then these storms came in, nothing. It stopped.
Yeah.
Who's going to go out and look at a house in a neighborhood that's trashed?
I know. That's, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, right now the neighborhoods were not presentable.
So from a personal standpoint, a business standpoint, you were like, this doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah, for us personally, like I was just like, oh my gosh, this is stupid. Like oh my gosh, I was losing my mind in Orlando in the hotel. Even I wanted to leave Orlando. I was like, we should have went to Georgia.
Oh, I know, because the hurricane was coming through there. And
I know. Well, here's the thing. We were at the DoubleTree in Orlando. Uh-huh. We were on the very top floor, the 18th floor.
Yep.
The wall was all glass.
Yep. When we got to the hotel, and I always get a high room because I like high rooms.
Yeah.
So I booked a high room, not thinking, and then when I go to check in, the girl's like, "So you want a high room?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Cool. We got the 19th floor, or whatever, the very top floor,
18th.
right?"
Yeah.
And we go up. And we had Gage with us. Gage had a room in the other building, like
but he was facing
the other way.
He was facing, what is it, east?
Yeah, something like that.
We were facing west,
Right.
so we could see.
Right. But so we go up to the room. We walk in, glass all the way up, whatever.
Yeah.
And Tina goes, "Why are we this high?" And I was like,
"Why are we this high with glass?
Yeah.
With all the wind coming straight at us."
I was like, "Oh, I didn't even really think of that." Because I always just get a high room.
Yeah, so I was a little on edge.
It was a little weird. I mean, the walls were shaking the night that the storm came through.
Yeah.
And we were in Orlando. That's 100 miles away from the coast.
I know.
Yeah.
I think the people that stayed behind to hunker down, all of them.
They said they would never do it again.
Yeah. Even my mom.
Yep.
My mom was one of them. She's like, I would never do that again. I was like, what about 100+ mile per hour winds makes you think, yeah, let me just sit here.
You know, the thing is they always tell you to run from water, hide from wind. And if you're not in a flood zone that's being evacuated, they tell you not to leave.
I still, even if we lived in Allendale in a nice block home and all this, I would not be.
No, I agree with you.
A category 4 or 5, whatever it was coming at us, I'm like, no, I need to get out of the way.
I agree with you, but they tell you not to leave because you're just clogging up the highways.
Yeah.
Right? But I know for a fact, I don't want to live through, be sitting in 120, 130 mile an hour winds for 8 hours.
No.
And I know people that stayed
Yeah.
and they're like, I'll never do it again. Scariest thing ever. People that stayed in high rises downtown.
Yep.
They were like, I heard the tower fall off of the 400
The crane,
Central building.
yeah.
I'm not doing that again. I saw the roof get ripped off of Tropicana Field.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, I'm
Yeah.
not staying again.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Those back-to-back storms that hit 2 weeks from each other and only 13 months from Idalia, it changed the way that people think about living here.
Oh, yeah.
It changed the way that people think about flood zones. Any buyer that we have on our books right now has told me specifically, no flood zones. We had clients that live in homes that are nowhere near water that flooded during Milton because of the rain.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden they find out that there's like some drainage canal that's like 500 yards away that you can't even see.
Yeah.
And it flooded from that. Right? Like, you're not talking about people that are living in waterfront homes.
Yeah.
It's literally people that are like, if the flood zone doesn't say X or X 500, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I won't look there anymore.
Well, it's like, I have said this before, years before these storms hit, where people would come here and be like, well, I want to be in a non-flood zone. And I'm like, do you see where you're trying to buy a house at?
All of Florida is a flood zone.
We're a peninsula on a peninsula.
Right.
Like Florida, first of all, the entire state in a whole is just hanging out there. Like,
Yeah.
instead of alligator lane, it's hurricane lane. Like, truthfully.
Yeah.
And then after that, Pinellas is just this little
It's
tiny.
all surrounded by water.
Yeah.
So technically, if you talk to an insurance agent, they'll tell you that the whole state is a flood zone. But there are FEMA designated flood zones that your insurance is based off of.
Yeah.
Right? So when we talk about not being in a flood zone, that's what they're talking about. They want to be in a FEMA flood zone. But there's still a possibility that the house could flood.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it could.
100%.
Right. So we have seen this sort of change in the market, this change in the psyche of people that live here, the change in the psyche of people that are moving here, coupled with people looking to take advantage of the decrease in prices. Like, if you go and you look in like Venetian Isles today, you could buy a tear down house for $1.2 million.
Yeah.
It's on the open water with a killer view.
Yeah.
Right? Prior to the storm, that would have been a $2.5 million purchase because the house would have been part of it. Now the house is just whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So there's people that are looking at those and taking advantage of those. We're going to see a lot more new construction in the next 12 to 24 months. These houses will be built.
Yep.
It's going to change the price points of neighborhoods like Shore Acres. The cheapest new construction home on the market in Shore Acres prior to the storm was $1.3 million.
Yeah.
Not on the water, right? So these houses that are being bought for $250,000, they'll be knocked down, and I don't know. I've talked to a couple agents who say that their builders that they're selling these homes to swear they can build a house for $800,000. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But even if that's the cheapest price, $800,000, because you used to be able to buy in Shore Acres for $300,000-$400,000,
Yep.
depending on the house.
Yep.
Well, all those will be replaced by $800,000 to $1.2 million new
Yeah,
builds.
it's going to change the landscape.
Yes. And I talked to builders specifically when we were getting these sellers, and I called them up, hey, you want to buy something? They said, look, we're not buying in the neighborhood, right? We're just
Yeah.
not. We're not interested in the flooding that happens during the rainy days and the sunny days.
Yeah.
So no. So there's even a pullback from some builders in neighborhoods like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we're just going to see this sort of face of the neighborhoods change, the makeup of the neighborhoods, the price points of the neighborhoods. And we're going to see a lot of people leave to go wherever they can, but I know they can't stay in St. Pete because there's just not enough inventory,
Yeah.
right?
And then after that, the insurance.
Oh, yes.
Like, we haven't even seen that. Like,
No.
how much more
Yeah.
is it going to go up?
I remember getting an insurance quote on a house that was on the market in Shore Acres prior to the storms for some clients. And I think it was like a $450,000 house. It was $7,000 a year for flood insurance.
That. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. This house wasn't on the water. We're not talking about a waterfront home. We're just talking about a house in a flood zone.
Yeah. It doesn't even make sense. That buyer at the 400 price range does not have those kind of funds.
Right. It doesn't.
It's just.
Yeah. Yep. So as we kind of wrap up this episode, we just wanted to come back into your social media spheres with a new podcast episode.
Yes.
Let you guys know where we've been, why we kind of been laying low, right? Like it just felt...
It felt tone deaf.
It did, right? We wanted to give the whole situation some time to breathe.
Yeah.
Let it go away a little bit. Let people kind of get their feet back on the ground.
Yeah.
We had conversations on a daily basis with people in private about this. We helped a lot of people get through this, but it just wasn't something we were putting out there publicly.
Yeah.
So now, if you're watching or listening to this episode, if there's questions that you have about this, DM us, whatever, our email addresses.
Send us a message.
Yeah. Because happy to talk about it. Other than that, babe, I just feel stuffy. So
yeah.
Do you have anything else to add to this?
I don't think so. I think that's,
Okay.
I don't want to keep talking about the hurricanes.
Yes. So we're hoping for a hurricane-free 2025. No hurricanes in 2025.
Not in our area.
That's what I'm hoping for. All right. All right, guys. So listen, thank you for taking the time to listen to us,
Yes,
to watch
thank you,
us.
guys.
Remember, like us on Instagram, like us on YouTube. Click that little bell that tells you to
Yeah.
subscribe, all that stuff. And listen to us on Spotify, too.
Yeah. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode.